So I guess now we have Mr. Shu in the line again, right?
Yes, sorry, I'm back.
Yes, no worries. I just introduced the topic to you, and now that my pulse can go down again, we can definitely continue with our presentation. Yeah. I just introduced you, and I think you will say a few words about your company that you're working for Philips. Of course, everybody knows, but you're working in Philips consumer lifestyle. That sounds a bit odd, presumably, for those who know Philips only from the good old days. And then, of course, we'd love to hear something about your background. How come that you're tackling a topic, artificial intelligence and innovation intelligence? That's, of course, pretty, well, let's say exotic combination. And then, of course, you will present your slides. We have something like 20, 25 minutes, up to 30 minutes scheduled for that. And then we'd love to answer questions from our audience, i.e. everybody can use the chat screen and simply pose questions whenever you feel like it. I will read out these questions at the end of Shu's presentation, and then he will take them one by one, and we have a bit of a kind of discussion along these topics. But now, it's all yours. I'm sure we're looking for an interesting presentation of yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for raising the expectation as well. Yeah, my name is Shu. You can call me Shu. So I've been working for Philips for quite a long time, and my main background is, my current position is a director of business transformation. So specifically focusing on help organization to transition from a analog world currently and in the digital direction, right? So this is essentially we have more and more data. We're much more connected than before. Digital is a de facto reality right now, and everything has to transition to this particular direction, so including intelligence gathering, and this is one of the important topics. And the reason why I'm actually interested in applying AI in intelligence gathering is kind of my personal interest by using the latest, the technology that are available, and to basically try to be a step ahead, if you like, and in terms of gathering, help a business to make the right decision in terms of marketing portfolio decision, innovation portfolio decision. So that's kind of where my general background comes from. My main background is innovation, industry quality. So I also has engineering background as well. So that's why I kind of can put those things together. Really makes sense. So the main thing for me, technology has really to add value. We really need to see the result from technology. So really, the example which I'm going to show you today is really a practical example. It's not a theoretical. It's rather practical. Okay. So with that, so I presume I can start. Let me go to next slide. And before we come to the details, so I'd like to perhaps give a short introduction about artificial intelligence itself, because we heard different names about artificial intelligence, over time. Artificial intelligence, obviously, machine learning, and deep learning. Those are the common terms that we heard. So what are the relation between those? And generally speaking, AI is a broad perspective, general term, as you can see the bigger circle over here. I think of past decades, and we predominantly using the machine learning, which is an advanced version of AI back then. And so typical example, we talk about machine learning. For instance, regression analysis or support vector machines. Those things have been using to help do various tasks like classification. deep learning is the latest version of the AI, whereas really deep learning breakthroughs really drives AI booms, because the deep learning, what the deep learning does is really can provide the performance which is a match human performance or superhuman performance. So that's why we experience AI boom. I can give you a very practical example. Your phone voice recognition, you know, and the back just a couple of years ago, and like 2 to 3 years ago, you know that your voice recognition on your phone is not accurate. So you have to repeat, it's not accurate, so you don't use that very often. I can assure you right now, many of you are using voice recognition because it is so accurate. And so that's really what behind those accurate voice recognition is deep learning. So this is really representing the breakthrough, because it actually providing basically a superhuman performance. So in terms of recognize and a voice interpret that into text format. Okay, so the next question that would be perhaps naturally come down into is, you know, why deep learning is performed better, or why deep learning neural network is a big deal. And so I want to use a example to hopefully illustrate and to demonstrate why it is very capable. And you know, hopefully this example will not confuse you as well. So if you see the graph down here, and so just imagine, can you use one line, if you draw any line of direction of a line, to separate the black dots from the white dots? Is it possible? You draw a line here? No, it's not possible, because the black dot and white dot still mix. If you draw a line here, no, still not, because black dot and white dot still mix, right? Still mix. If we draw a line here, still not, because the white dot, black dot still mix, right? So effectively, it is not possible by using a simple line or linear function to actually do the task, to actually separate and the black dots from white dots. So how we can do this? So this is where we can obviously do that via deep learning neural network. The way of doing so is simply, instead of using one line, we're using multiple lines, right? And so that's the magic over here. So each of the line basically representing, well, a line is a simple linear function, right? So line is a simple linear function. Is also a single neuron can do. So what you can do essentially is by chaining or network whole bunch of a neuron together to formulate some kind of a network. That's why it's a neural network, and to solve this complex problem. So essentially, for this graph, you can use 11 neuron or 11 neural network to actually help us to separate the black dots from white dots, right? So it's not so I just want to use this quick example to demonstrate how why it is powerful. So theoretically, there's no limitation on how complex this this architecture can solve, and it's a very it's also the neuroscience also inspired the technology as well. It's largely similar to what we have, how our brain works as well. So it's a whole bunch of a network coming together to solve a complex problem. And obviously, our human brain has a physical limit on the size of a brain can be, and well, effectively, theoretically, there's no technical or limit to on the technical neural network can be. Although that also limited, if there's any, that changing very quickly. Okay, so for today, because AI has many topics, AI has so many topics, and I want to focus on those two perspectives of today with this presentation, which I'm for the practical application. One is NLP, is natural language processing, and the second one is predictive modeling with probabilistic neural network. So those two I basically actually actively using in the example I'm showing right now. Okay, and So let's continue. And before I come to the details and why how exactly those things works, and in my particular example, so I just want to show you why I'm using review ratings. I'm actually in this particular example, I'm using online review as online product review as intelligence data collection, right? So we in order to generate intelligence, we first need to have data collections. So we need to I collect the data. I'm specifically using in this example using online reviews. I mean, this particular example is come from Amazon. I'm sure you heard Amazon and using Amazon, right? And nowadays, so it also provide an incredible amount of free data essentially. And in the past, people, we have to send out questionnaires and to the people. Now people just provide their feedback about that our product and for free essentially. So that's why we need to tap into these resources. The reason why I'm using reviews because it provided this recipe. It provides all the data sources needed that we want to capture how our consumer making trade-off. So what do I mean by making trade-off? Because in our brain, just imagine you go to a shop, you want to buy a product, and you compare different products. So you actually making trade-off in your brain. Is the thinking is hey, is that this product and this design, this quality, this features versus the price, right? So that's kind of a trade-off you're constantly making in your mind, or you compare to the competition on the other side, and just besides this product, and on the on-shelf experiences. So what you does is in your brain do this kind of trade-off calculations. So from intelligence gathering point of view, we want to model how you make trade-off, right? And if we can model the entire population and the way and on averagely in average way with a consumer making trade-off on this particular product, then we can design a optimal product essentially to meeting the consumer's demand. So this particular example is just show you, hey, these are the input. If you take this as a function, as a trade-off function, if you like, the input will be, and various comments about, the feature either they like or not like, with the input, right? X over here is one of representing the input. Then we have a function. One goes through the function, then we come back with a star rating, right? Star rating basically is a purchase intent or consumer satisfaction of this particular purchase, and in terms of price performance, right? So essentially, this is how a consumer make that decision. Then by providing the feedback, the reason behind it, why they give a 4-star rating in this case. So what we want to do is by collecting the information and model this, then design the product and to meeting the consumer demand. Okay, let's continue. So this is essentially the entire workflow I'm currently have. It's called review rating forecast simulation workflow. The main reason is obviously I'm predominantly using review rating as a data source in this particular case. We started with a problem definition. We need to define a scope. In our business, we specifically couple this one to value proposition. So we need to collect this intelligence at a very upstream level. So we think about on which product we, especially in the very early stage of innovation, really in the front end. Then one business want to invest and think about where should we invest in particular features and compared to competition, where our strengths or weakness compared to the competition, then we can tailor a strategy and basically wire an innovation project to actually meet the demand. So we're starting from, especially in the front end, called value proposition. We have a project scope. After we define the scope, then we get the data, and data is essentially free, available on the web. And this piece is a sentiment analysis. This is actually the first piece of AI algorithms being using. It's called natural language processing. So what it does, it essentially convert free text-based comments, right, and our review text into a structured data. Structured data is a positive, neutral, or negative. So what it does is, for instance, we predefine a set of feature that we are interested to know from consumer point of view. Basically, the NLP engine will looking through all the specific tags. If there are consumer talk about performance, for instance, of the product, then we tag them, then go to next stage. Then we do sentiment analysis, basically to convert this particular text into positive or neutral or negative, right? So in that way, we convert a unstructured data into structured data that we can use that for modeling. So after that, then we'll come to the next stage. This is the second piece of AI algorithm being using here is a probabilistic neural network, and with that we use that to neural network is a specifically probabilistic graphical model. So PGMs, and we use that to use that data input to model a probabilistic model to calculate probabilities. And well, once we have the model, then we can ask the model questions, right? And basically we say, hey, if we improve a certain part of feature, and how much more rating increase, and then we can expect from this improvement of certain features. And then once we have that, then we can compare each individually, and each individual feature, which feature can give us more return on investment than the other ones, and in percentage contribution to the rating, right? So that we can really have a quantitative data and in front of us, and that help us make a decision. And I will give you an example on the next slides. And after we have the numbers, obviously we're sitting together. With business, the number is number. We still need to interpret the number and to make that into actionable intelligence, right? And then basically we will come down into recommendations on which direction we should go, and for the next generation of the product innovation. Okay, here I'm going to give you one example, a simple example, because it's a simple example. If the example is too complex and the graph tend to be very large and it's not easy to explain, but in this particular case, it's a simple example. Is a drinking cup, right? As you can see, the total cup is a drinking device, basically. So how you roughly going to rating the graph? For instance, if I take this one as handling, let's say if we see a positive sentiment about handling, in the blue part is a positive sentiment about handling, we can expect average rating going to be increased by 0.67, right? Let's say assuming current average rating is 4, meaning if we see a positive sentiment of handling, we can expect rating going to be increased from 4 to 4.467 in this particular case. Obviously, if we have a negative comments about handling, and in this case, so that we can expect rating can go down by 1 star. To see here, so once we have this entire mapping of each individual feature, then we obviously know which one can help us to make a further improvement, give us the highest return on investment, right? If times the percentage of improvement, let's say if we improve 30% on the handling, that we can calculate exactly how much more rating we can expect to increase, and in terms of product, and in terms of return on investment. So it really help us to invest. Furthermore, once we do the innovation, in the innovation part, we typically have a kernel model, and the kernel model is basically we want to classify product features into 3 categories, and essentially is basic features or hygienic features and performance features, and also the performance factors, or then we also have delighters. Hygienic factor, hygienic factor is really something as a basic feature, really something as basic, right? Just like you buy a car and you have a brake, right? You have a braking system, is basically the hygiene factor or basic feature. So what does that mean? So if if for hygiene factors, if you if you're doing good, and and actually that's what it should be. So, and if you're doing bad, and the people tend to be extremely unsatisfied with with the hygiene factors doing bad, basically, right? Just imagine if your braking system of your car doesn't work, you will be extremely disappointed, right? And on the other hand, if your car braking system works, that's just it should be, right? I mean, there's nothing to be excited about, right? But what's the importance? Actually, in this particular case, as you can see, the flow rate is falling into the category as hygiene factors, and you see here, and it does not when you see positive sentiment, it does not increase your rating very much. On the other hand, if you see a negative sentiment, it really going to decrease your rating. It really going to decrease your rating. So this is really a typical example of a basic feature, which is not surprising in this case, because this is a drinking device, right? Flow rate is how fast or the speed of drinking the fluid can passing through the drinking device, right? For a baby or for a small child, the drinking device, if the flow rate is too fast, they might be choking experiences. So this is really something as a basic feature. So the parents will be very picky if your drinking device is choking your child, right? So this is a really example. So that means, from an innovation perspective, the hygiene factor has to be extremely reliable. So you don't want to, there's no compromise can be made. It has to be extremely reliable. But from a marketing point of view, you should not spend your money to make a advertisement campaign to talk about your hygiene factors, right? So like your BMW comes out of a new car, you definitely should not talk about, oh, our car braking system is great. That's nothing excited about it. So consumer won't feel won't feel exciting when something about hygiene factor happens. So I'm talking that service is basically just want to use that as a concrete example. Once we have this data, how we can use that for help us to understand our consumer, how do they perceive our product, and essentially, and then how we can do better. And this is just interpretation of the number in the practical sense. Okay. And then next slide. Obviously, once we have the model, and we can ask the model the questions like, hey, what if we want to have a 5-star product, and what kind of sentiment we should have? We can ask a reverse question, right? So that, as you can see here, this is actual, and this is the simulation. So in order from 4 to 5 star, and you have to do certain things. For instance, significantly reducing negative part of a certain perspective of the product, and or increasing the performance of a certain perspective of the product as well. That however, it does not tell you if this is technically viable. You only tell you this is a statistically most efficient way to actually reaching the 5-star. And that's essentially what the model does, and really help you, to understand what is how much you have to improve, essentially, and to become 5-star product, and it really give you some kind of benchmark. Okay, let's continue next page. Yeah, obviously we do that for in Philips. We have 2 main sectors. We used to have 3, and now mainly we have 2. Is health systems, which we produce a medical product. We also have a consumer branch, which is I'm actively in. Now the lighting is become independent, and independent company. So where Royal Philips, currently specifically focusing on the medical device, and then the other part is consumer products, and where that's my strength. That's where the focus on. I'm essentially focusing on all the different consumer products, and all of them essentially for the upstream innovation process. Yeah, obviously, once you can look at when you look at the competition, or once you look at Philips, there's nothing stopping you from looking at competition, right? So we can just really compare our product neck to neck with competition and directly, right? It's just freely available, right? And the data just there. So why not? We just look at them both together. So it really can help us to do this SWOT analysis in a quantitative way. We know exactly where we do, better, or somewhere, or where we do worse than our competition. Then we can tailor our specifically strategy and to actually meeting the meeting the demand from consumer point of view. Okay. Result and obviously I have done this for more than 3 years, and on the early project really help business to actually improve the sales by 15% on some example. But typically we have to see, and we have to wait for a long time, because this is a really early stage of innovation, front-end innovation process. You typically, after we done the simulation, it will take another year or even more sometimes, to actually see the product land in the market, and then we see the effect. So, but we did that, and for the early project, we really see the process. We really see how much contribution to actually to have this precision innovation, precise innovation intelligence that help business to actually invest in the right direction, if you like. Then the other part is efficiency and gain. So I mean, once you have data, we can get rid of all the kind of perception-based discussions, right? It's really become fact-based. It's a decision-based decision making, and we have the numbers, and it helps to remove lots of unnecessary discussions. And it's not like the strongest voice would win the battle of the decision. Now we have the numbers on the table, and is really streamlined, and the decision making process, and the discussion tend to be really streamlined, unless someone can provide a better number, other than this. And normally this is really straightforward from that process. Yes, I also published this my method actually in the journal of digital social media marketing, because I want to be recognized, and this methodology is not something I invented in the theory point of view, but I really using this. It is scientific proven. Basically, I'm going through this industry expert peer review process. It's not something is like a white paper typically released by the company itself, and this is really reviewed by industry expert peer review, and it went through the process, and this is proven, scientific proven. Yeah, and I think that's it from my presentation point of view. And
so thank you very much, Shu. This was very interesting. I'm sure for many of the attendees of this webinar, it's been the first time with this idea of combining several techniques and elements of a traditional product review, say, or innovation pipeline, and then of course jumping into the recent social media. So please post your questions via our chat function, and Mr. Wang will try to answer them. I have a first one coming up, which is along slide 7. Maybe you can jump back to that, so it's easier for us to follow what's this process, which was, by the way, very interesting. So first question was, why not use a traditional focus group to determine customers' needs, preferences, and perceptions, obviously?
It's very simple. Your sample size is far too small. And we want to have from a statistical point of view, just like political voting, and you want to have a random sample size of 1,000 to having a valid representation of your entire segment population. And typically have a focus group is 20-30 people. It's very easy to subjective to biased opinion, and of course, it makes sense when you do a deep dive on the dive in specifically on particular perspective. I'm not saying we don't use it in Philips. We do use them, but we're using that in the later stage, not in the early stage. Well, but on the different purpose, if you like. So this is very good at the method we're using here is basically generalized. So we want to become a reliable prediction, right? Not based on a fraction of a population, but we want to have a representative sample, basically.
Right. Along these lines, there's been a question about your sample sizes, so to say, i.e., how do you avoid trolls, hired guns? I guess this refers to people who simply are hired to like products or send comments into a review panel, and this must be all part of you, filtering in the end. How do you go about these, let's say, biases?
It's basically I'm predominantly using that from Amazon Review. Amazon Review has a tag called verified purchase. You will know that. I would recommend you to use that as well. So when you go to the product, you go to Amazon, you see that tag verified purchase. That basically means this review is given by the people who actually bought the product, not about promotional review. And so that's why the data is reliable.
So Amazon does the filtering and then you pick up whatever's left.
Yes.
Okay, but then again, if I may add from my side, so if you have predominantly using Amazon, so this is virtually one product, and then you do reviews of one product only. But this is, you mentioned thousands of reviews that you usually use. I can't imagine that there are 1,000 verified comments on a consumer product.
It's ideal stage is 1,000 obviously, and obviously we have a different benchmark on a different purpose, but that can be quantified on the different sample size with a confidence interval. If you have a bit of background, you have to know. Let's see, that's a prediction of a margin of error. Basically, it's minus plus percentage based on your sample size, basically, and you have a smaller sample size. Your confidence interval will be bigger, and that meaning you're less certain about your prediction. So that's part of that's part of the game.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, this must be an ongoing process, as you said, and you're learning over years to really calibrate your system. Okay, here's another question. This is obviously for existing products, i.e., there's reviews already around. Can you use this methodology for new product innovation, i.e., white spots or blue oceans or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good question. Let me answer that in two different ways. And the first part we answer the question is first of all, and we do this by measuring consumer demand, and we're not particularly looking at the product feature per se, but we actually want to gauge, what are the needs actually from the consumer. Innovation is merely a solution to meeting the demand, right? So basically, we use review as the way to understand the consumer demand. So that's an important difference. That's the first part of my question, and obviously, indeed, on the blue ocean and where no one has been entered before. And that we cannot using this data source, and the reason why we cannot use this data source is basically the way people giving that review is really based on the existing product and really, confined and constrained, way of asking questions. What do you think about this current product? So that means it does has the limitations on the whatever trend, if you like, right? I think your underlying question is how do you capture the future trend analysis. For trend analysis, I'm using a different algorithm and a different data source as well, because we cannot using the review because review is only focus on the existing product, roughly speaking. And for next generation of product is fine, but for the totally something totally new, never seen that before, blue ocean product, those kind of project, and probably we don't have too many, so blue ocean product is not a majority, it's a very small percentage. It may be less, maybe 5%, something like that, because the majority of innovation is upgrade. And for the blue ocean that we're using different ways. So for instance, social media. For instance, we can using Facebook or Twitter and some other feeds, so basically to understand what are the most trending topics on the topics, and because we have a different way of doing that. We can download a large amount of comments and based on the opinion leaders in the for instance in the Facebook on a certain perspective, like hair care, on the hairstyles, and which I did a project before, and the consumer having that we identify the people who are the opinion leaders in the hairstyle industries, and which is by having number of likes. Let's say we have 2,000 likes as a benchmark. We consider as a opinion leader in Facebook. Then we download their public messages via Facebook API, all legal, by the way, right? It's people choosing their message to be public, and it is and then basically we will analyze and over the time, and there's certain hairstyle, certain trend emerging, and from data point of view, from early stage, and that we can measure. And if we do, then basically we will catch them and analyze, see if this is a trend and coming up. So it is a totally different process, and even earlier than this one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I mean, this is marginal innovation, or you might call it improvements in the end. Yeah. Here's a question along these lines. When you do your sampling of reviews on Amazon, do you weight consumers which seem to know more than one product more than those with only one product experience?
No, I don't. Over the time, those things are not important actually, and it's just a part of the game, and because people have a different view, that we have a different type of consumer segment. It's just part of a random process. I really don't think that's the important part. Yeah.
I think the idea behind this question was that it's more valuable if you had a source knowing two competing products and then sort of giving you a differential comment on both products. But I assume this is very difficult to dig out, and same story.
No, it's not difficult to take out. It's actually, we can very easily take it out. It's not difficult at all. There's a tagging called voted helpful or not. You can check it on Amazon. If people voted helpful, have a more numbers, that one has been found helpful, something like that. But I don't find that one particularly useful actually. So it's not a giving. At the end of the day, it doesn't changing people's opinion actually. You might trigger people to buy, but in the end, people got their product on their table. They will give either negative or positive, mainly based on the product itself.
Right. Then we have two questions for slide 12.
Let me see.
This was your final one. The question is, how are your results accepted by market research? So do they usually fight it, or I guess do they support it, or do you do differential market research along these lines?
Oh wow! They jumped on me. Done a market research. That's exactly the part, and to done a market research is very expensive, and it takes a very long time. For instance, a market research methodology, which is comparable to what I'm using, called conjoint analysis, which is typically real research around actually asking the real consumers, like at least 300 to 1,000 people, 500 people, very expensive, and it basically generates the same trade-off information that we're having over here. It typically costs at least 50,000 a year, and up to 200,000 or even more, depending on what kind of things you can do. It used to be a luxury, for the marketing team to be able to do it. It has to be a top of the top line. They can afford this. Now, I'm doing this simulation is basically offer the same, very very comparable, and result and for free. Think about that, and that's
Well,
it's really democratized, and of the things used to be the elite. Now everyone, and for every single product they can come to me.
Well, I think that's a long debate whether you really substitute or you're kind of an additional source of information for decision making in this sense.
At least my experience, I'm not sure. At least my experience is to a large extent a substitute.
Right. So this is not good news for market researchers in your area, I guess.
But if using paper, that's where I think the traditional method. That's exactly the meaning for transition from analog to digital.
Yeah, but do you think this is a sort of a cultural issue? So Philips simply, and other companies as well, simply have to adapt to the new way of doing traditional market research? How does it play out? I mean, people are a bit of inertia, they're usually driven by knowledge, and this is new. So how do you get your results sort of into the brains and into the culture of your company?
I just showed them this is better. It's actually, I think the only way to transform people, to convince them this is better, you have to show them why this is much better than what you already have. It's very simple. Actually, my experience, I just come to those marketeers and say, I show you this is better. Not only better, it's much better, in a way of much faster. It's cost you free, and you don't need to have additional budget, and it give you the comparable result to the top of the line, and whatever you can offer. So I done the testing with a marketing, and I talked to them every individually, and to many extent I challenged them and say, hey, then afterwards they will see it. Oh wow, okay, then and then some of my convinced less, and some my initially less more hesitant. Some are more, and it take time depending on the personality as well. But eventually, once you give something for free, it give a comparable result. It's much faster.
That's a good sales pitch, of course.
Yeah.
Along these lines, there's another question. You mentioned when you explained this very chart that you got rid of perception-based decision making, which, of course, in hindsight, of course, means they must have been utterly wrong when it came to decision making.
It's suboptimal. Let's put it this way. I think traditional decision has been very perceptual based, or very opinion based, and the part of us, or even who complain the most, or who has the highest voice, something like that, and might sometimes perceive have a more. I mean, that's not only Philips, if you like. That's for every company. And if you don't have that data that to help you to make that decision, then everyone will suffer this. It is just nature.
Right. No, fair enough. Yeah. Okay, my last question. So please, everybody in this call and this webinar, please send more chat posts or question via chat to me. Here's a question: do you have any other example when and how to use AI in innovation?
But the example I just mentioned to you, and on the trend analysis, right? And that's even early. Basically, using that is a different algorithm, and basically try to understand what are the newly trending topic, if you like, along certain perspective which you are interested, and what are the consumer talk about a bit more, which is different. It's a different than search. People say, oh, you can using Google search to find a trending topic. No, that's not the same. Let me explain why it's not the same. Google search, when people know what term to search, from innovation perspective, you're already too late. Because people already know what term to search. It basically means there are existing product already in the market. So people, I receive this kind of question very often as well. So can I use search engine? The result. What is the most searched term? No, that's the most talk about it. But you want to be a step earlier. Then the search is not going to giving you that, because all of a sudden the most people search that. That's basically people already know, right? What we want to capture is somewhere early along the line, and you see the sudden change on the velocity it's difficult to explain. It's going to be another presentation if you like. And it's a totally different algorithm. It's just as complex, and if not more. And basically, you see certain group of and the early discussion, certain things is become increasingly closer on the space and to the topic you are interested in the early stage. We call that velocity change. Then you want to capture those ones and say, oh, there's a certain hype, spike on the changing of velocity of become increasingly closer to the topic we are discussing, and wow, that's something we need to pay attention to. That will give you step as more like an early warning system.
Okay, next question. Have you thought of expanding this methodology with different scope to reviews of retailers, i.e. media market? The media market. This might show consumer preferences in specific channels, for example.
No, yes or no, and yes is I tried, and no is I found it is not helpful. Actually I did, at the early stage, people say, why not why not using all the different platforms? Why you constrain yourself to Amazon? We have a different platform, right? Like a media market or some other platform on different countries. We have a different platform as well. The one problem with that, and there is, however, a difference between platform to platforms. So unfortunately, when you mix those different platforms, and you essentially introducing another variable in your model, and called platform to platform variable, which you don't want to have actually. Introduce additional noise to your data, and actually would be negatively affecting the way the model will be predicting the result. So what I largely found is Amazon just to be good enough. Actually, compare Amazon result to another platform is not workable. Actually, to me is not right, because what you rather want to compare is within Amazon, within the same country, compare your product to the competition. That's much more useful than cross-platform comparison, actually.
Okay. Do you even number for us how many products did you evaluate, assess like that?
How many? Oh wow! I have done so far more than 60 projects already, or 60 projects. 60 innovation projects already, and 60, right? And so quite a lot. And I mean, each innovation project means a whole bunch of SKUs, and it does not necessarily mean one product. And right, it's small changes, also a different product. So I don't know exactly, but I have done more than 60 innovation projects.
Well, sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
So take all the publication analysis and then sort of feedback around this, as you said, whole initiative usually to convince people to come up with new ideas, and your product design teams or whoever's good for this kind of innovation work.
Yeah, I'm one of the important things. I'm always open to any challenges, if you like, any questions. So that's one way I'm really communicate to all the different people. Initially, obviously, there were people have doubts, have hesitation, right? So basically, I always maintain transparent. So I will answer any question you have, any concern you have in mind. And plus, not only that, I also publish that to the journal, right? It's you already went through the peer reviews of industry expert, and that gave me some actual weight.
Actually, we have a question for that. Did you receive any peer reviews from other scientific researchers? Is it sort of something people elaborated or threw in their own experience? So can you sort of give us an idea of the scientific world and their reception of your article?
I mean, this is I'm basically only this journal, so I think it is good enough. For me, it's not necessary to try others. Why, I have one. And
but the question is whether you received feedback from, when you published such an article, whether you received feedback from researchers who said, okay, great, this is of course something we always wanted to learn about, or was it very criticized in terms of, oh, come on, this is rubbish, and we have better ways of doing that.
Okay, thank you. Now, actually, they are actually very excited. Actually, this is something they're always wishing for, to have this, something like this, and it's really something very, something they see the first time, and then basically a scientific method. The only comment I receive back is, initially I'm kind of a technical guy, to a large extent. I write it in the more technical side, and they say, hey, you perhaps you make it slightly less technical. That's the only comment I basically receive. You have to write it more on the way. How do I make this method and more make the writing more commute, more reader friendly, if you like. That's the majority of the comment.
Well, from sort of what I know about this kind of social media monitoring tools, and there are many companies now, software companies and marketing agencies who claim they do brand monitoring in social media, kind of helping companies to develop, protect their brands based on, yes, this kind of social media activities, not necessarily reviews of product only. And I could assume for them that must be quite interesting idea what you've done in terms of product development, as in now brand development.
You see, the fundamental difference is this is not a monitoring process. Actually, monitoring is really in the backend process. It's really, and landed in their market and something like that. There are many people does that for sure, but this is new. This is difficult because it is in a very front end process. So in front end, it's not possible to monitor, and it's really project based, and it's really innovation based process. So one of the important thing is that people ask me, there were vendors doing sentiment analysis of the existing product, and but actually, if you only do sentiment analysis, it might be very misleading as well, because sentiment is essentially the same as rating. You can just simply, by look at the rating, you already know, whether people like your product, yes or no. You actually don't need to do sentiment analysis. The second part is, if you do sentiment analysis, let's say 30% of people doesn't like your color, does not like the product color. So I would say, so what? And does it actually impact on the rating, right? So that part is unknown. So we have to have the transfer function.
I think we were much lost now, our speaker of today, but anyhow, we are, so to say, done. He has very delightfully answered the last question about this whole context of scientific world. And I have to thank everybody who's been attending our call. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had some fun and some food for thought about the future of this kind of artificial intelligence-based innovation. And have a good time trying it out in your arena, or of course, digging deeper how you can apply such a methodology to you. If you're interested in learning more about our Insight series, and this webinar is pretty much part of this, check out our website. There you'll find archived versions, and of course this webinar as well. So then you can easily dig deeper into some of the interesting topics. So have a good morning, day, evening, wherever you are, and let's talk next time around with our next webinar coming. Thank you very much for attending. Bye-bye.